Hey guys, welcome back to World of Warships. Today we're taking a look at the Niord. This is a new Tier 9 European battleship. This is very similar to that Karl Johan that is so fun at this tier. It's very different, of course, in the guns and slightly different on the hull, but here we do get much larger caliber guns, which is very nice. As a battleship player, I do enjoy a bit larger caliber than the 305s like we usually see with battle cruisers. So you're going to notice the guns are going to be punching much harder than the Johan. There's going to be some downsides too, but overall, I had a lot of fun playing this ship. I had a lot of fun with it. It was really, really enjoyable. And a brawler that is not focused on secondaries plus main guns. It's a brawler that is focused on torpedoes and main guns. The secondaries really aren't worth going for here. And that's very, very interesting. I had really, really good games with this ship when the Matchmaker cooperated. I think we're all aware of Tier 9 Matchmaker these days, so I won't go too hard into it. This ship, of course, is the latest Dockyard ship. So over Christmas season, you will be grinding through Dockyard missions to get this thing. There's going to be 20 phases total to actually get this ship. And 18 are available to grind for free. The last two, though, you will have to buy if you want this ship. The initial bundles are going to be 5,000 doubloons for those two phases. So that's the cheapest way to get this ship. Of course, it will be early access for that price. Once you've progressed far enough in the Dockyard, I'm not exactly sure how far that is, it will go back to a standard price for phases, which is 3,000 doubloons for each phase. And that means if you take my advice of waiting to see if you actually have the time to complete the full Dockyard, you're going to spend 1,000 more doubloons on the ship if you pay for those last two phases right at the end versus buying it up front. Personally, I don't see that as too big a difference, and depending on how much time you have over this holiday season, maybe wait on buying it. That would be my recommendation, but still, 5,000, 6,000 doubloons is a decent price for a Tier 9 ship. That said, there is a time commitment to actually earn this thing. Partway through at Phase 8, so not the halfway point, earlier than the halfway point, there's another premium ship offered. Good stuff, Wargaming. We've complained about that in the past, of course. Anytime they've had dockyards in the past where suddenly that premium ship partway through was missing. This time we have one, it's the Kalmar, and it's a destroyer, Tier 5 European DD. Haven't played it yet. We will be playing it soon. There's a lot of ships that just had their NDA lift today. So we'll start with the most interesting one to me, though, that's for sure. As for the other bundles, there's another starter pack where you can get, for 12,600 doubloons, 6 phases. I'm not sure why you'd necessarily do that. Maybe you just don't have a lot of time, I suppose. And every phase you complete after getting this ship will actually get you 400 steel. So that's the event. I like to see the premium ship back. I like to see the option to get that premium ship for free by grinding through. And then the main event, the Niord here, is 5, more likely 6,000 doubloons. Isn't too bad. So let's talk about what this ship can and cannot do. You've probably already noticed that the guns are temperamental, but overall going to do very, very solid damage. They are Tirpitz guns. That is what you need to know about them. They have the same AP, the same HE. The only difference relative to Tirpitz on these main guns is going to be your reload and your turret traverse and the Sigma. That is it. 1.9 Sigma instead of 1.8 Sigma on Tirpitz. That's the tendency for the shells to go to the center of your dispersion reticle. And 0.1 is decent, but not a massive change. The other thing being the reload. 21-second base reload. That's not even counting reload mod, which of course Tier 9s do get access to. Very, very nice. The DPM, the reload on this ship is very, very fast. Turret traverse being 30 seconds versus Tirpitz is 36 seconds. So small differences there, but really the reload here is excellent. You don't have a lot of overmatch at Tier 9 with just 380s, and I think that's a good thing, design decision overall. Given the fast reload, the speed of this ship is pretty good as well as the concealment. We don't need this sub 20 second 30 mil overmatch on this ship. I'd much rather the guns be more accurate and do better damage to these broadside ships and do less damage to angled ships. And I think this ship fits that mold. And of course, the torpedoes. Actually, no, guns first. We're almost through the guns. I almost forgot. The firing angles. This is a key difference versus the Karl Johan, which does not have the best firing angles. You got to go quite broadside with that ship to fire all of your guns or all of your torpedoes. This ship forwards has a 27-degree firing angle, combined with this armor that we'll take a look at later in port, which is very, very good. Yeah, it's a formidable ship, well angled. Broadside, you can take some pretty solid hits. It is a rubric hull after all. 28 degrees angle backwards to fire all of your guns. Very, very nice. Onto the torpedoes, 29 degrees forward, 30 degrees backwards. So you're able to fully angle your ship very, very well and still use all of your primary weaponry. It's a good ship for that. It's an excellent brawler in that sense. You don't have to give a lot of broadside. At those closest ranges, almost suicide, to actually use some of your weapons on some of these German battleships at high tier. I'm sorry, German mains, to keep picking on them, but 40-degree angles on a brawler battleship is not really that good. HE shells being just Torpedoes HE, I really didn't use it all that much. The fire chance is okay at 34%, and you do have 95 mil pen, which is nice. But I definitely focused more on the AP, using the concealment as well as this speed to try and get into positions to actually make use of that armor piercing. We've done some decent damage this game, but now we get to Brawl, and this is where I had so much fun with this ship. First, we got to realize there is no hydro with this ship, and that is a big downside versus Karl Johan when we're dealing with brawling. But I do feel like the improved angles on all of these main guns and the torpedoes make up for that. Sure, you're going to need a few more torpedoes. This ship does have lower HP, but I just had so much more fun playing this ship. I should mention that I played 2.5-3 hours worth of Karl Johan yesterday. At least as I'm recording this, it was yesterday. And I still had very good times in that ship. I had a lot of fun. But the firing angles really limited what I could do at closer ranges. Anytime I wanted to go for my rear guns, I ate just so much more damage. Karl Johan has great armor, but you have to give enough broadside to eat large salvos anytime you're going for your torpedoes or for your main guns, at least all of your main guns. Not so here. You can be fully angled and use those torpedoes, use those main guns. 32 mil upper bow as well. I haven't really talked about that too much, but it is a rubric hull with better armor. It's very, very nice. We're holding our torps till the last minute here against this Massachusetts. We do need to land all of them. These torpedoes are still very, very low alpha damage torpedoes. So you got to hit a lot of them. 8 hits there, all 8 to finish them off. 10,700 damage on these ones, and they go 86 knots and are actually able to get to 15 kilometers of range. Johans only go 13.5 kilometers. Johan, of course, does have much better detection as well as a better reload on those torpedoes. So there are some nice factors about Johan as well. Don't get me wrong. That ship is still a ton of fun. I think both of these are very fun brawlers. But I really enjoy my time with the Niord here. It was a really, really fun experience. Outside of these overpens on the broadside cruiser at close range. We'll make up for it, though, with that salvo. Don't really know what I did differently to get such different results, but hey, I guess I will take it. I should speak about this reload, too, on these torpedoes. It's another copy-paste. It's not a copy-paste. That's the wrong wording. I apologize if any devs are listening. That's not the nicest way to put it. But it's the same as Ruprecht, these torpedo reloads. 140 seconds is the exact same. So if you're used to Ruprecht reload, you can kind of think of it as 15-kilometer versions of Johan torps. I suppose that makes them Holland torps, yeah? And a 140-second base reload. We can buff that up with some upgrades. No real commander skills to buff these torpedoes, but for the most part, I found that to be fast enough reload. The offset of this extra range is probably made just because the concealment is worse here. A couple kilometers worse concealment than the Johan. Johan's got like 10.8 kilometer detect. This is 12.6. No, it's 10.6 Johan, I think. Sorry. Not exactly looking at the fully built ships at the moment, but very, very strong detection on Johan. It's got a lot of competition against the Johan there, but I do think this ship, thanks to its better main guns, in my opinion, and these torpedoes going a little further range, allowing you to get some value out of them, even into those double up-tier games into super ships, it's a nice ship to run. We're up to 265,000 damage. And I make a mistake. I make a few mistakes in this video. I had a bit of a hectic morning, actually, a lot going on around here. So full focus wasn't exactly here. So we're gonna miss these torpedoes, and we don't have the backups. I totally forgot, or I didn't notice in the moment, that they perma'd my other torp set on this side. So now we are going to die. I kind of threw this game. I apologize, teammates. That is on me. I should have won this game. We actually do end up losing this one, unfortunately. The Jean Bart goes on to kill both the Tirpitz and the Hipper. Bit of a throw on my part, I apologize, but it shows off some of the massive strengths of this ship. 13 torpedo hits, 7 citadels, 6 kills. It's fun, man. It is really, really fun. I think if you're interested in brawling at all, this is an excellent choice. Going into ranked battles, brawls, the game mode brawls, not just the area of the map where you're close to enemies, I mean, as well as arms race, sorry, that's mode shuffle now, and asymmetric battles. That's the last one. All those game modes are going to be great for this ship. But even in random battles, open water random battles, this ship is a bit of a force. We're not going to take very much damage this game while staying angled. The AA is decent. No AA is particularly good in this game, but against tier 8 carriers, you can do okay. Certainly 1, maybe 2 drops are going to get through to you, depending on your teammates' AA help, but you're going to shoot down some planes, and you're going to notice that in this video. Los Andes pushing in, of course, and sure, we don't have the secondaries to brawl with him, but we have the torpedoes, and I think that's a really cool distinction that this ship, as well as Johan, has. And actually, the more I've played the Niord here, the more I really think the secondaries are just bait on the Johan. They certainly are here. They're very, very bad here. If we compare the secondary DPM to all the other tier 9s and look at the hitting DPM, 17,000 hitting DPM at 10 kilometers places it in the bottom quarter of all battleships at tier 9. You're not going to use it. Johan is at 27,000, and that's like half to upper half, I suppose. Look at those torpedo hits, man. So good. But still really not worth using. I try it. I have tried it with Johan. Certainly the fire chance is amazing on Johan. The Niord here is missing out on the larger caliber secondaries. You still get the 120s, but you don't get any of the 150s. That's why the DPM is so much lower. So it really shows that this ship is a close mid-range ship that is focused on its guns and its torpedoes, not on the secondaries. And I think that's really, really cool. If you're not someone who enjoys secondary brawler battleships, I think this will be a great option for you to go for the torpedoes as well as the main guns. You're in a bit more control. There's less of the AI gunners, as it were, to actually be doing the damage for you, like we see on some of those new ships, like Los Andes. And no hydro on those new Pan-American battleships means you can catch them off guard, especially with this speed. These torpedoes aren't too bad to land. Going back to the torps, though, of course, I do have to mention that the DPM is much, much worse than the Johan. The Johan's got 86-second reload base on its torpedoes. Don't go quite as far. You're missing 1.5 kilometers of range, which is significant into these up tiers, or at least into these kiting games. But yeah, 140 seconds versus 86, that's a pretty massive difference. So there are some downsides. It's not just outright better. In fact, I wouldn't even say you're wrong for thinking that the Johan is just better than this ship. I think it comes down to, do you want to have the faster DPM on the torpedoes, or do you want to have the larger caliber main guns with, in fact, a better reload as well? The reload for the Johan is 25 seconds on the main guns there, 12 305s versus 21 seconds on the Niord here with the 8 380s. You also get 0.1 better Sigma, whether that's worthwhile or not, over Johan. But for me, what it comes down to is the firing angles. Concealment's worse too. Man, it's such a toss-up. They're both good ships. They're both very fun. The Johan I will be taking a look at soon. Maybe not so soon, actually, given how many ships just had their NDA lift. It might be a little while, but I will take a look at Johan so we can have a little fresher perspective on it as this Dockyard progresses. But Niord is very, very fun, and I think a worthwhile Dockyard ship to go for. If you have the time, this is a ship to grind through. It's just a lot of fun. Torpedoes knocked out again, and I'll take a look at the build towards the end, of course, but I am running the main armaments upgrade on the upgrade slots, so buffing the survivability of our main guns as well as our torp tubes. And I do have preventative maintenance on this commander, so perma torp tubes even through all the buffs I can possibly give to the survivability on the torp tubes. Except maybe some of the, I think maybe the speed upgrade on torps gives you some survivability. I don't remember, actually. Haven't used that module much. I have been focused on main gun builds with this one, although I did try a couple of games with the torpedo reload. Not the speed, just the reload. Sacrificing some main gun DPM. It's still very good at 21-second reload to get these torps back a little faster, and I had some fun with that as well, since the torpedo reload is just so long. But look at us, just kind of sending it up the flank here, managing to do over 100k in this game. Sure, there was no destroyer to push us, but or torp us out here, but very, very solid, just running around and not taking too much damage, I would say. Still, though, the HP pool is a definite weakness. Tier 9 to have basically 60k HP is very, very low. Standard Tier 9 battleships are 75, 80k HP. We see that with like Iowa, 79,000 HP. So you're lacking a lot of HP here. There's no special upgrade to this heal either, or this damage control, so it's not amazing in that regard. You do have to rely on angling for the survivability here and making use of your solid concealment. I think those are the two key elements of this ship. And again, no hydro. Karl Johan getting the 5-kilometer hydros, as well as Ruprecht getting 5.5 kilometer hydros. They are very, very useful things, especially when you're pushing in. And as this game progresses, yeah, that Shiratsuyu is going to be a problem. I wouldn't recommend pushing torp TDs with this ship, certainly. It's very, very hard. You just have to kind of guess. It's a bit of an intuition thing. After playing the game for so long, you get a feel for when people are torping, how they're going to torp you, how you can dodge those torpedoes. Part of that comes down to playing torp boats yourself and understanding when battleships or cruiser players are doing something obvious that allows you to torp them easily. And then when you're playing a battleship, just don't do those things. It's easier said than done, though, for sure. Broadside Algerie, we've seen some very inconsistent performance out of these main guns, but they still slap. They certainly can still do some excellent damage. These Tirpitz guns are no joke still, especially with slightly improved accuracy. And this amazing reload pretty much guarantees you broadside shots throughout the game, assuming people aren't just turning out from spawn and kiting off the screen instantly, which can happen these days, certainly. Certainly can happen these days, but for the most part, if people are playing mid-ranges, you should be getting some shots on broadsides, and that is where the ship is going to perform very well. Here, pushing into that Shiratsuyu, it's a little scary. I'm not gonna lie. It is a little bit scary. And of course, these two games, these best games that I have had, it's been Tier 9 as top tier Matchmaker. Yes, the elephant in the room is the Matchmaker. In my opinion, Tier 9 Matchmaker has gotten so much worse ever since the release of Super Ships. Not a very hot take, I know. That one's probably ice cold, but these days, it feels so much worse in the last couple months, I think. Maybe it's just because I've been playing more Tier 9s, playing them more for some of these coal ship reviews, some of the Black Friday ships, a lot of Tier 9s around. Maybe I've just been playing them a lot recently. It's pretty rough. There's a video that I've already recorded that's coming out way late because, again, so many ships had their NDA lift. It's pretty rough. I had 5 super ship games in a row playing Palmer and Anawami back to back to back to back. That's not very fun to experience as a Tier 9. So something you should know going into this. Yes, Tier 9 ships do have premium credit multipliers that the Tier 10 special ships don't have. but you still need to have good results in games. You need to get a lot of base XP to actually earn credits in this game. So having a good game in a tier 8 versus a bad game in a tier 9, you're going to earn more credits out of the tier 8 premium than you will out of the tier 9 premium. And it used to be that tier 9 was the most consistent tier for good games. You only had to deal with +1, -2 Matchmaker. And +1 into tier 10 versus tier 9s wasn't so bad. You already had access to that 6th upgrade slot. For a lot of the ships, they gain most of the power up to that tier 10. Not all of it. There's certainly some exceptions where it's the other way around. But there's some examples where we're able to get a lot of the power in tier 9. And tier 10 isn't so bad. And then often you would just be double down tiered anyway into the poor tier 7 matches. And you'd do amazingly well as a tier 9 premium ship to earn so many credits. These days, I do feel like the super ships tier really hurts tier 9 because it is such a massive power spike over tier 10, right? We talk about having tier 12 ships in the game. It's not even tier 11 sometimes. And yes, while being tier 8 in a tier 10 match does suck, we're going to ignore this dispersion. We're going to continue with this point. Being a tier 8... tier 8 into a tier 10 match does suck. I personally view it as less bad, it's still bad, but less bad than tier 9 into super ship games. That's just my opinion. I'm not totally sure on that yet, to be honest with you, but it might just be because of that day where 5 super ship games in a row. Are you kidding me? Not very fun, not very fun, that. Our pen, not quite enough here for the broadside Yamato, but still doing some good work. Managing to torp this Sherman, but look at how much HP he's missing. Yeah, the HP or the torpedo damage is quite low, especially if we hit the bow, which I do believe we did. Accuracy is very, very good into destroyers, as it has been for a while. For some reason, battleships just get a dispersion buff anytime they're shooting DDs. I don't know what it is. Poor DD players, man. Anytime you're playing a DD, it's like, wait, that battleship has better dispersion than I've ever seen when I play that one. We'll hit like everything onto that Harugumo or that Sherman, and then we're just gonna miss a bunch on the Los Andes. Feels bad. But that is kind of battleships. There's a lot of RNG to it, and this one is no exception. No battle cruiser dispersion here. You get battleship dispersion with slightly better Sigma, but 1.9 really isn't all that special these days, I don't think. And a very fast reload. So even if the guns are trolling you, you reload so quickly that it's not as big a deal. Certainly the Brick or Vermont, when it trolls you with that 40-second reload, you got a lot of time to sit there and stew over how RNG screwed you. Here, though, you're at least reloading quicker, and you get back into the fight and are able to follow up with another salvo that's hopefully going to perform better. Something like Republic plays a lot like that. The dispersion can be awkward with Republic, but it just reloads so quickly. This one, of course, though, does not have the overmatch characteristics of the Repub. But this is the end of the games that I have to show for you for now. I think this is a very fun ship to play, even if battleship dispersion sometimes a little bit not amazing. It's still very, very fun. The torpedo element of a brawler instead of the secondary element, I think, is very, very cool. And I didn't even mention it yet, actually. Wow. The 360-degree turret on the back, much like Ruprecht. Very, very similar hull to Ruprecht. Same reload on the torps as Ruprecht. But the rear turret also goes 360. Very, very useful for when you're pushing in, allowing you to use 3 of your turrets whenever you're just wiggling back and forth like this. It makes it a lot easier to swing back and forth while pushing, to use both sides of your torpedoes when they're ready without feeling like you're really missing out on a lot of your main gun's DPM. Sometimes it can feel like that when playing Johan or other secondary battleships, torpedo ships in general, to spin around to get your other side torps, and then you're waiting for your slow turret traverse. It's nice to have that one 360 turret. None of the front turrets are, though, so when you're in a kiting position, that is less of a benefit. But it does quite well regardless in those kiting positions. That's where it wants to be, of course. Torpedoes are much, much better when people are pushing into you. So even in this super ship game, managed to do a little pushing, got 3 torpedo hits still, 145k. By no means a bad match. You can still do well in super ships. It's not like it's game over for a tier 9 ship, but it's a lot harder. And some of those games you're just going to be purely locked out of playing. And that's a little disappointing, and something you should know about these tier 9 ships, especially brawling ships, before you go purchase this thing. So I definitely had a lot of fun playing the Niord so far. Early days still, got to play this thing more to really get a handle on what it's capable of, how much better or worse it is than the Johan. It's a very interesting dockyard ship though, as they usually are. And I definitely think this one's worth looking at grinding. See what the missions are like. We'll see how long it might take. But I do hope that this one's a reasonable one to grind out. Certainly not as good as Johan at spamming out the torpedoes. I think that's the one key point that I haven't mentioned enough yet. 86-second reload on those torps versus the 140 seconds without the torpedo tubes upgrade, which I had a lot of fun running this instead of the main guns, by the way. It is a key weak point here of saying this is a similar ship focused on main guns and torps, yet the torpedoes reload so much slower. But I don't believe Johan reloads its torps fast enough in a brawling scenario to really get value out of 2 launches from the same set of torpedoes. It is fast, it's much better in a kiting flank, for example, but when you're doing those full send pushes, you saw how I was often waiting for the perfect opportunity to torp at close range anyway, and when I did launch the torpedo set a little early on that Jean Bart in that first game that I threw, it didn't go so well. So you want to be waiting anyway. So that I don't see the reload making as big a difference there. I'd much rather employ the better turret angles, the better torp angles that Niord does have. Johan, again, has better secondaries and the hydro still, so there's still massive advantages. They're similar, but in both very, very fun to play, in my opinion. Karl Johan, very expensive, only available for doubloons. I'm so sad they didn't bring the Johan back for coal, by the way. I really don't feel like there's any good coal battleships to recommend to people these days, unless you like hybrids. Kearsarge is just kind of busted, but I don't like hybrids. We know that about me. But this thing is just so fun and interesting that it makes a perfect coal premium ship. But instead, it's only for doubloons, and it's a lot of doubloons at that. So Niord offers you a way to get a similar playstyle, better in some ways, worse in others, for a bit of a discount if you have the time to grind it out. Quite a bit lower HP pool than many tier 9s, certainly less than Johan, right? Nearly 10k less HP, certainly does matter. Torp protection is not great, certainly for a ship without hydro that wants to be mid to close range, might be pushing a little bit. You only get the 120mm secondaries, so there is no real secondary build. You're missing out on those big secondaries. It's a big downside, and even for Johan, I think the secondaries are just bait. The 15 kilometers of range is awesome. It is really comfortable to use. Johan can get a little closer in games without carriers or a lot of, plane spotting in that to use its 13.5 kilometer torps and use its faster reload on the torps. But the extra range here makes it more comfortable in more of these higher tier games. The AA is fine, but I don't want to talk about that. We're dealing with a decent top speed here. Certainly running something like Brisk can be quite useful. 12.2 detect. I said it wrong earlier. I don't know why I said 12.6. My bad. 12.2 is solid detection, but Johan, it's 10.6. So pretty massive concealment bonus for the Johan. But then we go back to turret angles, man. It's so nice to have these turret angles. It's just beautiful to be able to angle so well and still use everything. I'm a little split, as you can tell. Haven't played it enough to really give you a firm Johan's better or the Niord is better. I like them both, and they are very fun brawling ships. The build I was using was a little bit like this. I certainly did try a game without Brisk and without emergency repair, and I instead went for super heavy AP. That was some of the earlier games. It went well. It went fine, but I didn't necessarily think I needed it, and I felt like Brisk would allow me to get into better positions to better make use of these guns and find more broadsides, find better torpedo angles than the extra little bit of damage here would give me. That's a bit of a toss-up. Certainly we could maybe think about giving up emergency repair expert, one less heal to get some of this stuff, since you're not looking to tank for extended durations, I don't think, not with this HP pool. And it's not the easiest thing when you just finally decide to push in to make use of all 4 heals, all 5 heals even when you're building for it. As for the upgrades here, certainly the full main gun build is going to perform better. Torpedoes, of course, you need people within torp range, and that's not always going to happen, even with torpedo tubes upgrades. It's fun, though. It's just more fun with the torps, man. And the torps do have quite a long reload here. Certainly with the Johan, you could get away with not buffing the torps at all, and they're still going to come back up ridiculously fast. And I think the opposite is true here. 21-second reload is more than enough to catch cruisers' broadsides when it happens. So maybe you can buff the torpedoes more. But it's nice to have the option to do either one. And the commander build stays the same. I think that's a real key factor here. If you're not really having a lot of the elite commander XP to swap commanders over. This is a press account, so this is just all given to us from Wargaming to make content, of course. But even on my main account, I've got 17, 18 million elite XP to swap commander builds around. When you're running secondary build and then you want to swap to a more tank build on some of these ships, you're just spamming commander resets. And to try that out on a lot of these other secondary brawling battleships, that's very expensive. Certainly not what you can do as a newer player. But on this ship, the build is the build on the commander. There's not really much you want to be changing there, I don't think. And the real change comes here. And this is just credits to unmount this. Sure, doubloons, but just use credits. And that's a cheaper way to go about changing the build up and trying different things. And I think that's a really nice benefit of this ship too. And before I forget, let's see that armor. Yes, 32 mil. It's so nice, man. If we look at the Ruprecht, for example, you see 27 and only 30 here as well. So quite a bit worse there. Deck armor is still going to be 32 everywhere. So very, very similar armor, but it has been upgraded. And that is very nice to have that 32 mil bow, because it is a large exposed section. That's one of the weak points on the Ruprecht, where Schlieffen gets a lot more icebreaker. Can't even really call it icebreaker at that arm point. It's basically just bow armor. Let's take a look at the Citadel real quick, because yeah, it's a waterline Citadel. There's some spaced protection. There's a gigantic cavity in here, so a lot of black hole armor. I mean, the thinness here on the bow means that even if you overmatch 32, it's going to be hard to pinpoint that bow Citadel, even if you do plunge through it. So a little bit of a weird Citadel design there, but I guess that is what it is. And yeah, you're not going to be punished too hard for going broadside, which I'm not a fan of. I do wish more ships had more above water citadels that were thicker, so you don't overpen the citadels as much. But we've heard that rant from me before. As always, I want more damage, more consistent damage to broadside ships, less damage into angled ships. But hey, this ship won't take much damage angled, I suppose. That is a benefit of this thing. And it is a lot of fun to play. Torpedo focused, not secondary focused brawler with a very solid main guns that will still troll you from time to time. But that's it. That's all for the first impressions here on the Niord. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Thank you very much for watching, and have a great rest of your day.